Hey everybody, this is Holly Coleman, your instructor, and we are going to cover a pretty boring topic to most people, but it's something that we have to cover because it's part of like training anywhere when you're dealing with any population involving psychology, sociology, psychology, and that would be your ethics and your boundary issues. So, most mental health professionals, they have a working definition of ethics, which is simply, this is the rules of conduct of my profession. So our professional codes of ethics they often add a word like enforceable to further stress that importance of professional ethics. The National Association for Clinical Social Workers, for example, it states that professional ethics are at the core of social work. The profession has an obligation to articulate its basic values, ethical principles, and ethical standards. I think it's the NASW Code of Ethics sets forth values, principles, standards to guide social workers to guide their conduct. So similarly, the American Psychological Association states that the ethics code is intended to provide specific standards to cover most situations encountered by psychologists. It has as its goals the welfare and protection of individuals and groups with whom psychologists work, and the education of members, students, and the public regarding those ethical standards of the discipline. So the ethical standards are generally written in very broad statements and apply in varied roles and contexts, but they're guidelines that remind us that ethical standards are not exhaustive, and even when conduct is not specifically addressed by an ethical standard, it does not mean that the conduct is not necessarily either ethical or unethical. So while this type of definition is generally clear, what sometimes becomes less clear is the comprehensive role that professional ethics play in our daily lives as psychologists, social workers, counselors, and therapists. And when asked what ethical issues they have recently faced, many people in these fields are unable to point to any recent ethical dilemmas, and in reality that is really the case, and often we have internalized ethical principles to such an extent that we don't stop to ponder whether a decision we make has ethical ramifications. So, with that being said, you can actually Google and do some research on ethics and boundary issues. I found some good stuff on CE for Less and different medical sites. Just kind of actually did some research on the NASW and the APA standards just to kind of see how similar they are, because my undergraduate is actually in psychology, not social work. My minor was only in social work. So those are kind of like two fields that, even though they seem similar, I've always felt like social work is to address the problem that you have right now, whereas psychology seems to want to find more of the root of the problem and study that cause and effect, and kind of dig a little bit deeper, where social workers are like, all right, you got a problem, let's fix it, let's do it. Psychologists are like, well, you have a problem, let's figure out why. So anyway, you take a recent example that occurred for the author of this material. When working with an adolescent client who had been slow to connect but now had, the adolescent revealed in session that a close friend of hers was a client that the author had seen previously and who was now in residential treatment. The client in treatment had the clear expectation of returning to the therapist upon discharge. The dual relationship was purely coincidental, and the current client was unaware of it. Now, many issues are apparent here, including the ethical issue of dual relationships, as well as a variety of therapeutic issues. Okay, while it is important to consult colleagues on this issue, it was equally important to review the relevant ethical standards that apply here. A course such as this provides such an ethics, provides an ethics refresher, and then then you're reflecting on times in which ethic concerns have, maybe come up in your professional practice. And we want to encourage people in this training to reflect on questions and just kind of what is your judgment on things. But you need to be sensitive to ethical problems as they arise. You take into account the complexity of the issues. So. But anyway, I'm not going to go too much into too deep into ethics right now, because we'll cover more of that in other classes. But I do want to say I want to talk about how do ethical problems occur. So on the ceforless.com, under ethics and boundary issues, they have a good part that talks about, and I'll just quote it from them: both laws and ethics provide the boundaries through which to consider the many potential conflicts that may occur in a therapeutic relationship. Mental health professionals have a responsibility to the clients they serve. Although the scope of services may vary, the fundamental need to protect a client's interests does not. Ethical dilemmas occur frequently. Ethical problems also occur, but can be reduced through vigilance on the part of the provider and knowledge of the ethical and legal codes. So the following is a list of some common reasons that ethical problems occur. Alright, so some of these things are what the provider can control and some are not. So it says, how do ethical problems occur? And it was like, number one, people are human and make mistakes. Number two, clients misreport. So I don't want to say clients lie, but man, I've had some patients that are very creative thinkers. Okay, maybe inexperience, ignorance, unpredictable and unforeseen situations. And then it goes on to say foreseen but no way to avoid them, inadequate agency policies, guidelines not adequate for situation, and ethics, excuse me, ethics in conflict with law. Okay? You want your ethical awareness, it's continuous. It's an active process that involves constant questioning and personal responsibility. It's crucial to question our own decisions and behaviors, not just the decisions of others. When in doubt, ask questions. Be aware of codes and legal standards the best you can. A lot of it comes with experience and where you're working. So, just my rule of thumb, when in doubt, once again, just ask your supervisor. If someone calls you and says, hey, I'm such and such, do you have a patient there by the name of blah, blah, blah? And you're going to be like, well, let me check the case file. Or actually, I wouldn't even say that. I'd be like, well, hang on one second. Pull the person's name if you have them. Look and see if there's a consent to release information. If that person's name is on there, then yeah, you can go ahead and get on the phone and go, yes, we do have a person, blah, blah, blah. But if you don't see that person's name anywhere, you cannot confirm or deny that that person is at the hospital. That is a violation of their privacy. It is a HIPPA violation. So, and it leads into confidentiality. So, confidentiality, it's therapeutic. There's a therapeutic, legal, and ethical issue. Okay, confidentiality, is central to developing a trusting and productive counseling relationship. Here's a case study sample. John, a 16-year-old high school junior, has been in treatment with clinical social worker Sandra Connell for the past year. She has become increasingly concerned by his depression and has noted some signs that tell her that he is considering suicide. Sandra asks that they have a family session with John's parents to discuss the situation. She reminds John that it is a legal and ethical mandate that she get John help given the seriousness of the situation. John is very resistant and angrily storms out the office when Sandra tells him that she will be contacting his parents. Did she handle the situation well from a therapeutic standpoint? Did Sandra handle the situation well from an ethical standpoint? So, what do you think, guys? If you're in a class and you're watching this video with more than one person, feel free to pause it and then discuss, and then you can hear what my opinion on this. So, if you have someone that is telling you, I am thinking about hurting myself, you have to tell someone. You have to. Like, if you feel that this person is serious and potentially has a plan, he's a 16-year-old boy. He's a minor. So yes, she did the right thing by contacting his parents and saying, look, you might want to pay closer attention to him this evening, because in my session today, he was talking about wanting to kill himself. So, I think she did the right thing by wanting to talk about it. Like, she asked, the way I read the case study was, she asked John, I think we should have a family session to discuss this situation. And she reminded John that, I have to take this seriously. I'm sorry. At the end of the day, she's not there to be John's friend. She is there to provide, therapy. So I think she did it right, okay, therapeutic-wise, and I think she did it right ethically. What if that kid would have gone home and killed himself, and she didn't say anything to anyone? And then they find out, oh, well, he told you, and they'd be like, why didn't you say anything? So, see, I believe that she did the right thing. He was 16 years old. He's underage. Confidentiality, it can be the leading cause of a lot of ethical complaints. Because then you can start talking about, well, if I go and tell my priest something, I'm Catholic, and I go to confession, and I tell my priest something, and it's supposed to be just between me, the priest, and God. Well, I really think that if you tell, and I'm not Catholic, I'm Methodist, but I think if you tell somebody, just regardless of what their career is, whether it's a priest, a therapist, a nurse, a teacher, anything that's working with people, if you express signs that you're going to hurt somebody else or hurt yourself, I really think that that's when you got to say something. So, some people might disagree with me on that. So, the NASW Code of Ethics states social workers should protect the confidentiality of all information obtained in the course of professional service, except for compelling professional reasons. The NBCC Code of Ethics states, NCC, recognizing the potential for harm, shall not share information that is obtained through the counseling process without specific written consent by the client or legal guardian, except to prevent clear, imminent danger to the client or others, or when required to do so by a court order. See, so that basically just says, somebody tells you something in confidence, whatever your profession is, and they start talking about hurting themselves or someone else, you gotta say something. So, that's just me summing that up. So, we are going to move on to the next area. Let me pause real quick. Ooh, I found another case study in this book. And it says Kara Clark, CSW, works for a community mental health center. During a walk-in day, she assesses Dawn, a precocious 13-year-old who shares that she is seeking treatment due to severe depression. She has an intermittent suicidal thoughts, however, states that she can contract for safety at this point. Dawn states that her parents do not approve of counseling, but that she feels that she will get worse without this treatment. And although Dawn is not completely forthcoming, Kara believes that her home situation is unhealthy and may be abusive, although she does not believe that Dawn is in current danger. Although Kara knows that she must consult in this case with a supervisor, she decides to offer Dawn an appointment for an outpatient therapy. She will further assess whether a report needs to be filed with social services. Can Dawn consent to treatment? What are Kara's obligations with regard to parental notification? Alright. Confidentiality considerations, okay? A parent who consents on the minor's behalf generally has the right to know the content of the child's treatment. Okay? So there's that. But the term age of consent refers to laws related to the medical and legal rights of minors and is the age at which a minor can consent to medical care without being required to notify their parents or obtain authorization for care. This is not about the age of consent regarding sexual behavior. Completely different. Completely different. I've had people in other classes I've taught say, well, the age of consent is 17. The age of consent is 18. Okay, we're not talking about sex here. Alright? Other consent laws govern sexual behavior. Most states have specific laws regarding age of consent, and it's important that practitioners know the specific laws for the states in which they practice. Some states allow minors whom the laws deem mature, such are those who are married or in the armed forces, to consent to treatment. Sometimes minors may consent to treatment for substance abuse or sexually transmitted diseases. It's important for the clinicians to be familiar with the laws in the states in which they practice. It also is important to note that while many age of consent laws refer to consent for mental health treatment, there are often different standards with regard to consent for psychotropic medication or inpatient hospitalization. Okay? So, I mean, again, 13 years old, I would say yes, she's 13. Her parents know that she needs to see a therapist. So, I mean, you can get her to consent to treatment, but I mean, also the parents, I think, were on board with it. Her obligations to regard the parental. If that girl is talking about hurting herself or whatever, you got to involve the parents. Now, if you feel that that girl is going to hurt herself because of the parents, because she may potentially be in a dangerous situation, then I think what I would do personally would be to call Child Protective Services and have them go ahead and do an investigation. Yeah, that's cool that you're going ahead and scheduling her another therapy session, but if you suspect that there's abuse happening in the home and I don't know if that's a good idea to wait on that you would just pause. Let me get that therapy session in. I want to go ahead and bill real quick. I mean, you're thinking a girl's getting abused, so you're going to just go ahead and, just schedule another session there. Here's another case study. Vicky, a social worker in private practice, sees Eric, an 8-year-old boy, for the first time. His parents described hyperactive behavior and a propensity to get into trouble, some classic symptoms of ADHD. The evaluation today was at the request of the school, which had also noted the difficulties expressed by Eric's parents. Vicky first meets with the family, noting that Eric actually appears quite withdrawn. There was little eye contact between Eric and his parents, and at times he appeared to physically shrink away from his mother. Vicky does not see any evidence of hyperactive behavior, but she does recognize that sometimes this is not evident on first meeting a child. Vicky does note several bruises on Eric's arms and legs, which Eric's mother states are a result of rough play. They also state that Eric has been known to lie and that he has done so in the past with school authorities. Eric's parents reluctantly agree to Vicky spending time alone with Eric. In meeting individually with Eric, he makes reference to hitting and screaming. Suspicious but uncertain what she was seeing, Vicky decides to assess the case further. She was later alerted by local hospital that Eric had been admitted due to multiple fractures. Okay. Well, in that situation, I think, let's see, so it just ended right there. This book, the CE4less.com, Ethics and Boundary Issues. I'm on page 9, if you guys are looking at this. Yeah. Okay, here's my problem. She goes ahead and interviews Eric by himself. He's talking about hitting, screaming. She notices bruising. I mean, it ends with Vicky decides to assess the case further. She was later alerted by local hospital that Eric has been admitted due to multiple fractures. Okay, there's a big gap of information right there because I'm thinking, okay, she wants to assess the case further. Did you go ahead and send him home? How many days lapsed? I mean, by assessing the case further, you would think that it sounded pretty serious, that she intended to, maybe get things going. Apparently she didn't. And now he's in the hospital with multiple fractures. If she didn't call Child Protective Services before this happened, you might want to call it now, because you can get fined for failure to report. Say they go ahead in the hospital and find out that somebody knew or somebody suspected a child's being abused, an elderly person being abused, anybody being abused, that's especially in a vulnerable population. But they suspect something and you didn't say anything, and then something happens, I'm telling you, they are going to come for you. They will come for you because you knew and you didn't report it, and that is considered failure to report. So, anyway, I appreciate y'all listening to those case studies and just listening to my professional opinions on this. With that being said, I'm saving mandating reporting. We're going to go ahead and talk about physical abuse, mental, sexual, all that stuff. We're going to talk about that in another video. That's a whole separate video, because that dives into deeper, to multiple different populations and different types of abuse, and that links in your boundaries. So I think what we should talk about next would be HIPPA. HIPPA, 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 HIPPA. And people cringe. People cringe when they're like, oh God. So I am going to try to sound really excited about telling you about HIPPA, HIPPA, HIPPA. So a good quiz question, guys, is what does HIPPA stand for? And it's HIPAA, Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act. Sounds so boring, doesn't it? Let's just break it down. Basic rules. An employer's health plan can use and disclose PHI for most routine uses and disclosures for payment, for treatment, and the operations. Most Other uses or disclose of PHI, personal health information, require a signed written authorization. An employer's health plan has to give certain rights to individuals. For example, right of access by a participant to his or her records, right to propose a change to the record, and accounting disclosures. The handling of these rights can be delegated to a third-party administrator. Administrative requirements, training, privacy officer, privacy notice, many policies, procedures, and sanctions up for violations. Violations, you think? Yes. There's a lot. I'm telling you, you will get hit with some fines. Simple negligence? Oh, $50,000 fine. Or 1 year in prison. Or both. Disclosure under false pretenses? $100,000 fine. 5 years in prison. Or both. Intent to sell or use information. Like if you friggin' get somebody else's social security number or their address or whatever, $250,000 fine or 10 years in prison. Holy crap. I mean, that HIPAA violations will ruin your career. Real life examples of some privacy breaches. Documents referring to over 125 psychiatric patients of a hospital were found in a convenience store trash can. A medical student had taken papers outside the hospital and dumped them in the trash. The documents included a list of patients in the psychiatric unit and their diagnosis. Oh my God. Some people will be like, well, what's the big deal with that? I don't see what's wrong with that. Okay, let me tell you what's wrong with that. If I get committed into a hospital, I say I have a nervous breakdown, and I'm super paranoid about anybody finding out that I was in the hospital. I'm like embarrassed. I don't want anybody to know. Especially like if you're like Britney Spears or somebody. And then I find out, I'm thinking, oh, no one's going to say nothing. And then I find out that someone just took my copies of my records and just threw them in a convenience store trash can for the whole world to see. That's horrible. That is horrible. So another example is doctor staff looked up employer's medical record to learn about her birthday so they could throw her a surprise birthday party. Employee's medical record contained many sensitive details previously unknown to the staff. So what if your coworker had HIV or AIDS? You know, people are like, that's the same thing. No, HIV or just something, super private. Like, you just had your coworkers basically look into your file for your birthday. Instead of just maybe, I don't know, looking on Facebook, because that's what I would have maybe done. You're going to look in your coworker's medical file. I would have sued them. Yeah, don't take selfies at work either. That's a HIPAA violation. You're at the hospital, late night, let me bust out some TikTok videos. Oh, super fun. Oh, look at me. HIPAA. You are HIPAA violating. Okay? Let's see what else. Alright, the difference between privacy and confidentiality. Privacy. Individuals' right to be left alone. In healthcare, the right to limit access to healthcare information. And then confidentiality, the expectation that information will only be used for its intended purpose. Confidentiality relies on trust. Well, I bet you that person that had their stuff thrown in the trash can was pretty pissed off about that. The rights and responsibilities, privacy belongs to the person. Our duty is to respect and control personal information. Confidentiality, you're going to avoid redisclosure, sharing confidential information you gain from another source. And, the exceptions would be a medical emergency, a duty to warn abuse. Privacy, protected health information, need to know, anonymity, Those rights and responsibilities. The supervisor ethics, because we were talking about ethics earlier, is to uphold the highest professional standards, seeking professional help when work or personal issues may interfere, conduct as a role model and agency representative, reinforce zero tolerance for interactions that are not courteous, compassionate, and or professional, uphold vision, values, and principles of wellness, treat supervisee colleagues, peers, clients with dignity and respect, and adhere to all standards and regulations of privacy. I really wish I could say that I've had supervisors that did all those things. I didn't. I have had crazy examples of supervisors. Unbelievable. And what I've learned is, let me tell you something. When you go into a job, remind yourself that this is a job and that these people are not your friends. I don't care if you've known them forever. I've worked at it with them for so many places. Just don't. You keep your world separate. Have work, have home. Don't mix the two. Just don't. Because then you're able to set those boundaries. And when you have those boundaries set, and then you have a super crappy supervisor, you can actually call them out on it, because if you're being cool and you're setting your boundaries and you're upholding real high professional standards and you're just doing everything that you're supposed to be doing, and then you see someone that's not, then you can say something and you're like, look, I'm doing it, why aren't you doing it? Follow the freaking rules. Someone comes up to you and it starts whispering in your ear, oh, I got something to say. Oh, I found out about such and such. Oh my God, did you hear about why they're in the hospital? You stop them. Just stop them. Stop them right there and just be like, look, I'm here to work. I'm not here to gossip. I know. And that's hard for me to say that, because sometimes I do like to gossip, but I don't do it at work. Okay? And I don't gossip about my patients and clients and things like that. That's just, no. So the most common HIPAA violations: unsecured records, unencrypted data, hacking, loss and theft of devices, lack of employee training, gossip and sharing personal health information, employee curiosity, improper records disposal, unauthorized release, and third-party disclosures. So unsecured records, a good example of that is, I've actually walked into people's offices before, and they'll have, a medical chart just sitting right there out, open, with the person's name right there. And, as their supervisor, the first thing I say is, you're not in the office, but this chart is, and it's open. Oh, I just got up and go to the bathroom. I understand that, but you should have closed your door and locked your office door if you had a chart in there. If you needed to go to the bathroom, and you're going to come right back because you weren't done working on the chart, then you need to close your office, because here I am walking in your office. I could be a stranger. I walk up to your desk. I see the chart open, and now I just saw everybody's business. You see? And it was very unintentional. Unencrypted data is passing emails back and forth, and sending files and things like that aren't locked, encrypted. Hacking into, someone's medical file or someone's stuff. Losing, say you work for a medical company, they give you a computer and they give you a jump drive. You got all these people's information on it, all your clients, especially if you work in the community like I do, and then you lose it. or it gets stolen. Now you've got everybody's stuff on there. The lack of employee training, well, let me tell you, this is why I'm doing it. This is why I'm doing these stupid videos, because that's what you're thinking. Hey, these videos are stupid. Well, I'm telling you, it's way more entertaining than going and sitting in a classroom. At least you can listen to this at your own pace and, eat popcorn while you're doing it. Just look at the bright side. But employee training is definitely really big in most, a really big issue in a lot of companies. I'm telling you, I've worked for some major companies in my career, and man, some training, I walk out of there going, wow, that was awesome. And then some companies, I wasn't even trained. They literally just handed me a binder, told me to review the binder, and then that was a wrap. I'm like, okay. Gossiping, sharing personal health information. Like I said previously, oh, such and such isn't at work today because I think she's pregnant. Okay, that's gossip and sharing personal health information. Employee curiosity. Well, that sounded sort of like the example I just gave, but like those people in the example that I read that wanted to know their coworker's birthday, so they pull her medical file. Improper records disposal. Well, I read the other example to you about the person that threw a whole bunch of documents in a dumpster. No, you're supposed to shred medical documents, okay? And if you don't have a shredder, you better cut them into a million little pieces. Unauthorized release, meaning a patient could refuse a consent to release information, or maybe you forgot to get them to sign one, so that's considered an unauthorized release. And then your third-party disclosures, selling information to different companies like telemarketing, that's a third-party disclosure. Not having a consent to release to talk to, a good example is sometimes when I would transition people out into the community from the hospital, and I would try to be linking them to community services, but the thing is that I'd have to get a consent to release information to talk about them to these other people. Even though I'm trying to link them to a resource, I still have to make sure that all my bases are covered and that this one place, the resource, is able to talk about him, and then the client is comfortable with me talking about him to those people. So you just want to have all your bases covered when you're discussing someone's health plan or support team or whatever. So that's your 10 common HIPAA violations. So, a way to kind of safeguard yourself is, make sure that you log off your computer when you leave your area. Dispose of paper in proper confidential bins to throw away. Your big companies will have bins where you just dump the stuff and they get a shredding company to come get it. Position your computer screen so patient information is not visible to a passerby. Okay, that blows my mind when you walk by someone's desk and you can just see everything they're doing. You're like, you're on Facebook. Okay, locate printers and fax machines in secure areas. So you definitely don't want to be making copies, getting faxes where there's a lot of traffic, because if someone doesn't put a cover page on that and they fax you over something, everybody's seeing it. Never take home patient information unless it's approved. So if I'm going to go, like, I go to my boss and I say, hey, I want to work on some stuff this weekend, but I need this, and this, I would then be notifying my boss, letting her know, making sure it's okay, writing down what I'm taking, writing down what I'm doing, and putting that all in the file. Don't discuss a patient's medical history to other employees. So what I know, they may not know. A key thing to remember, patients need to feel confident their medical records are confidential. They trust you, especially in a psychiatric setting. You know, they might be telling you the craziest things, and you being sloppy with that information, that's extremely traumatizing. Okay? You want to ensure that private information is not going to be disclosed without a client's consent. And that privacy, that right of the individual to keep their personal information from being disclosed. Privacy, privacy. The do no harm thing that we were talking about earlier, I went ahead and flashed a card that I had found, latrogenic, all the different things of boundary management, dual relationship. So I'll leave that up there for a second so you can look at that. And then cell phones. Oh my God, cell phones. Let me tell you about cell phones. I forgot to tell you about your cell phone. Hey, home care people. If you work for a home care agency, do not text patient names. You can do a first name, you can do a last name, not a full name. I know that there's actually apps that your company can get, that's medical apps, but some home care agencies don't do that. So use first names only. Texting first and last is a big no-no. Also, taking photographs of your clients without family or guardian permission. Or the client themselves can sign if they're considered a competent major, if they're able to make their own decisions. You're working with a disabled individual, y'all go to the park, you're taking pictures, that's great. Did they sign a consent? Because if you post that on your social media or whatever, that can be considered violating their privacy because you're just exposing that they're a client of yours. You see receiving services. That's considered HIPPA violation. So, with that being said, don't be blasting stuff on your phones, guys. That's a no-no. And, just kind of, just be safe. Some other examples of breaching confidentiality is a licensed practical nurse for more than 20 years. Bob knew the importance of safeguarding a patient's privacy and confidentiality. One day, he used his personal cell phone to take photos of Claire, a resident in the group home where he worked. Bob received permission from Claire's brother to take the photo. She was unable to give consent due to her mental and physical condition. That evening, Bob ran into William, a former employee of the group home. While catching up, he showed William the photo of Claire and discussed her condition with him. The administrator of the group home later learned of Bob's actions, terminated his employment for breach of confidentiality. And y'all are probably like, oh my God, but he didn't do anything. No. Let's back it up. Come on now. I just talked to y'all about blasting your cell phones and blasting your pictures. So, if he would have, okay, so he got permission. So, if he would have just kept the photo to himself, nothing would have happened. But see, he ran into someone that used to work there, doesn't work there anymore. The brother gave permission for him, not William, the former employee. So showing him the photo of Claire, discussing the condition, yeah, that's a big old HIPAA violation, and yes, you should get fired. But I mean, it's unfortunate because for anything else, you could have been suspended. I don't know. So Emily, the other one is Emily, a 20-year-old junior nursing student, wasn't aware of the potential repercussions that could occur when she took a photo of Tommy, a 3-year-old leukemia patient in a pediatric unit, on her personal cell phone. When Tommy's mom went to the cafeteria, Emily asked him if she could take his picture, which Tommy Tommy immediately consented to. Emily took his picture as she wheeled him into his room. She posted Tommy's photo on her Facebook page with the caption that said, "This is my 3-year-old leukemia patient who is bravely receiving chemotherapy. He is the reason I am so proud to be a nurse." Wow. In the photo, room 324 of the pediatric unit was visible. Days later, the dean of nursing program called Emily into her office. A nurse from the hospital found the photo Emily posted of Tommy on Facebook and reported it to hospital officials, who also contacted Emily's nursing program. Now, the story doesn't end with her getting kicked out of nursing school, but I bet you it did. Because let's pick apart that. He's 3 years old. Okay? 3 years old. Is he old enough to give consent and kind of know? Maybe the mom doesn't want anybody to know that he's in the hospital, or the mom doesn't want anybody to know that he's got leukemia for whatever reason. So that's kind of a big deal. You didn't ask the mom, you asked him, a 3-year-old. Also, you don't need to be blasting where you work. You just blasted him all over like you're some sort of hero. Oh, he's the reason I'm so proud to be a nurse. Okay. Whether that's true or not, come on, stop. Okay? You could have just written about it on Facebook. You have to show his picture. Then you're going to hold the room 324. I mean, you might as well just give them out their personal address as well. So, I mean, do y'all see that was just kind of like super inappropriate. So inappropriate. So inappropriate. And then we'll dive more into when we talk about abuse and neglect, but I guess I'll just go ahead since we talked about ethical and, kind of like a little bit of legal stuff. Mandatory reporting, the definition of that is all persons responsible for the care of an incapacitated or vulnerable adult or child have a duty to report suspected abuse and neglect. Reports must be made immediately by phone or in person to Adult Protective Services or Child Protective Services, depending on the person's age, to the police. Failure to report is a misdemeanor. See? There you go. I told you guys. Failure to report. So, I hope you guys have pretty much learned in your hour with me today. I think this is probably only a 30-minute session, but I hope y'all kind of are wrapping around, especially if you've already worked with this population. Please be careful with your cell phones. I mean, our cell phones are amazing. It's so cool that we have such great technology at our fingertips, but FaceTiming while you're at work, FaceTiming and letting your boyfriend or girlfriend or whoever see that you're at work and there's a patient behind you, that's definitely a HIPAA violation. You're violating that person's privacy, really. One company I worked for, they didn't want you to wear scrubs when you went into the community with a client or disabled individual, because they said that violated their confidentiality. That was kind of a HIPAA, borderline HIPAA violation, because which I have two. I'm gonna talk about my feelings on that. Okay, I have two feelings. On one hand, I think scrubs are very awesome when you don't want to mess up your clothes and you work for a company that doesn't like give you a clothing allowance or whatever. So I always thought like, okay, well, I'm wearing scrubs because I don't want to mess up my clothes. And especially if I have a client that has high behaviors that might freak out in the community and I'm going to be chasing them down the street. I think if I look like somewhat like a medical professional, people might take it a little bit more serious than if I was in street clothes. So in that situation, I feel scrubs are better. Now, on the other hand, if you have a very high functioning individual that's developmentally delayed, and they're very embarrassed about having staff, or they don't want people to know, or they don't want people to think about them as being disabled, then yeah, wear your street clothes. So if you go out bowling with them, definitely wear your street clothes. Wear appropriate street clothes, because I've seen some staff walk in with cut-off tops and friggin' Daisy Duke shorts. Super short shorts. I'm like, what are you wearing? So there's always that one person on Casual Friday that ruins it for everyone. You're like, oh my God, what are you wearing? So, just keep that in mind. And I will go ahead and wrap up this video and say thank you for watching video 2 of my training series that I've put together on health pad education and training. So definitely subscribe so that way you know when there's more videos that come up in the series. And also comment below and let me know of any personal stories or things that have happened with you in regards to HIPPA or confidentiality or your ethics or boundaries. Have you ever had a patient that's completely crossed boundaries, or even a doctor that you might be working with and you're like, whoa, that's inappropriate? Share your experiences. It'd be nice to get some conversation going on what's appropriate and what's not. Because sometimes, people look at me up when I address their clothing and they're like, what? Like I'm some sort of drag that I don't want them wearing a V-neck shirt to where they have cleavage. I mean, you're around, your client for today is someone that's sexually inappropriate. Do you think that's appropriate? Come on now. So, with that being said, y'all have a good weekend. Today is Friday here. It's in September. And I am looking forward to putting some more videos together. Don't hesitate to email me if you have any questions or concerns or need a certificate of completion for this topic. Have a good one, and y'all stay safe out there and wear a mask, alright? Bye.